It's absolutely imperative that FDA has the right workforce and authority to ensure that medical devices are working properly. Lives depend on it.
Welcome to GAO's Watchdog Report, your source for fact-based, nonpartisan news and information from the U.S. Government Accountability Office. I'm your host, Holly Hobbs. There are millions of medical devices for sale on the world market, and even more are being sold every day. Here in the U.S., the Food and Drug Administration, or FDA, is responsible for overseeing the safety of these devices and issuing recalls when they're found to be unsafe. But recent headlines and high-profile lawsuits have drawn attention to the effectiveness of FDA's efforts. We'll learn more about this issue from GAO's Mary Denigan-Macauley. Thanks for joining us.
Happy to be here.
So Mary, maybe we can start with, what are some reasons why a medical device might be recalled?
Yeah, so there are a variety of different reasons that you might get a device recall. It can be as simple as an expiration date, and so it needs to be recalled so that they can either extend it or issue a new one. You can have incorrect labeling, or there can be something more serious like a malfunction. Imagine if you have a pacemaker and it malfunctions. That can be pretty serious and life-threatening.
Are there some types of devices that get recalled more often?
So based on the data that we looked at, which was from 2020 to 2024, we found that those devices related to cardio, such as stents, pacemakers, and heart valves, were the ones that were most likely and most common to be recalled, followed up by orthopedic, which I think many of us are more familiar with, maybe if you need a hip replacement or a rotator cuff fix.
How is FDA reviewing these devices for safety and deciding if a recall might be needed?
So they have a few ways that they can do this. First and foremost, what they do is they monitor what we call this adverse event data. So manufacturers and doctors and hospitals, they'll go ahead and enter into a database when they become aware that something isn't working as it's intended to do. And so FDA will go ahead and look at that data and determine if there's, for example, a pattern that might be showing up that they need to be concerned about. They also do on-site inspections to see if their manufacturer is in compliance with all of the good manufacturing that they should be doing. And then through both of these processes, if FDA finds a pervasive enough issue with the device and the manufacturer is not doing anything about it, then they may go ahead and talk about making sure that a recall is done.
How often does FDA issue a recall?
In most cases, the manufacturer is the one who identifies an issue and will do a voluntary recall, will initiate that recall process. We looked at from 2020 to 2024, and that accounted for about 96% of the almost 4,000 products that were recalled during that time. FDA has the ability to mandate a recall. They got that authority in 1990, and they've only used it 4 times. One of the times was for an anesthesia ventilator that was a component of a machine used for infants. And so it was pretty critical that it worked properly. And so there was a mandatory recall issued there.
What's the difference between a voluntary and a mandatory recall?
A mandatory recall is when FDA goes in and mandates that the recall be done because the manufacturer has not done a recall, a voluntary recall, for example. So in a mandatory, it's required, and it's very resource intensive for FDA to have to do that. So the hope is that the manufacturer will do that. And as mentioned, our data showed that about 96% of the time, that's the way it was done.
If these devices are unsafe, why wouldn't all recalls be mandatory?
Well, it's in the best interest of the manufacturer to do the recall, and they usually do. They want their product to be safe. They want people to come back and buy it again. Obviously, we always have a few bad actors, which is why you need to have the oversight. But in general, the manufacturers that we spoke with and FDA believes that, it's in their best interest to do so, and FDA would like to keep that cooperative relationship that they have.
If FDA has this process and it's issuing recalls or working with manufacturers on voluntary recalls, why are we looking at this issue? What's the concern?
Well, if you think about just the vast scope of medical devices, according to the World Health Organization, we have over 2 million devices that are out there in the world. And in the US, you're talking about 200,000 distinct medical devices. So it's a huge number. And the number is just on the rise. There's new technologies that come along. There's new devices that need to be check to ensure that they're in compliance and working properly. And really what brought this about was we've always had the concerns. This is an issue that has been on what we call our high-risk list, where we identify programs that are concerning to us because of the critical service that they provide to the public. And so when you look at medical products more broadly, that's important that this be done properly. Americans need to have safe drugs, safe devices, safe vaccines. So we have that ongoing concern. And then a few years ago, you see problems with what they called a continuous PAP airway pressure machine, what most of us know as a CPAP, if you have some issues with sleeping at night. And they found that the foam that was put into those machines could break down, and particulates, including particulates that have the potential to be harmful with chemicals, could be breathed into the person's airway passage or swallowed. And it could become an irritant, it could cause headache, it could cause asthma, the potential for cancer is there. Well, in the long run, more than 500 people had died from this particular machine. So that really caught the eye of Congress and obviously FDA as well.
So Mary just told us about the important role FDA plays in overseeing the safety of medical devices. But FDA may struggle to do so as more and more devices enter the market. So Mary, what more do we think FDA should be doing to ensure its recall efforts are effective?
So as I mentioned, the oversight of medical products is on our high-risk list because of ongoing concerns. Specifically, we have concerns that they may not have the right workforce with the right skill set. The device world is constantly changing. New technologies make it extremely difficult to ensure that the workforce understands how all of these devices are working. So they have to have the right workforce with the right skill set. They have gone through some changes over at HHS, not just this administration, but in the past administration as well. They had developed a strategic workforce plan for FDA more broadly, but during this review, they said that in light of the new administration coming in, that plan is no longer valid. And so we've asked them to, again, take a look at their workforce to make sure that they have the right skill set and the right number to be able to do these recalls effectively. What the workforce is impacting is their ability to make sure that they're hitting their goals, that they're timely in what they're able to do, because the last thing you want is to have a faulty product that stays on the market. You need to resolve these things quickly. The other thing that we are concerned about, too, is ensuring that they have the right authorities. So we mentioned that the manufacturer initiates most of the recalls. But there are times where FDA may disagree with the manufacturer's plan of action for how to rectify a problem. And the last thing you want is two different sets of information going out to the general public and to doctors and hospitals. So the manufacturer might say, no, keep using it, but double check this. And FDA may say, no, we don't recommend that you use that. And that conflicting information is extremely difficult to maneuver when you're trying to figure out whether you should be using a medical device or not. We have asked FDA to go back and assess whether or not they have all the authorities that they need to ensure that the manufacturer is doing the best job they can to make sure that these products are safe.
And it sounds like some of what we just discussed may actually be outside of FDA's authority. Are we asking Congress to take action?
So at this time, we are not. Our belief is that FDA has more that they can do before we need Congress to step in, and specifically looking at those authorities and doing those workforce plans. But keeping Congress apprised is extremely important, obviously, since they hold the purse strings.
Last question. What's the bottom line of this report?
The bottom line is that it's absolutely imperative that FDA has the right workforce and authorities to ensure that medical devices, for example, heart and brain implants, are working properly. Lives depend on it.
That was Mary Denigan-Macauley talking about our new report on medical device recalls. Thanks for your time, Mary.
Thanks for having me, Holly.
And thank you for listening to the Watchdog Report. To hear more podcasts, subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. And make sure to leave a rating and review to let others know about the work we're doing. For more from the Congressional Watchdog, the U.S. Government Accountability Office, visit us at gao.gov.